Well, thank you so much for joining us. And today we have Mr. John Grab talking about intervention. Maybe if you could just quickly walk us through the process as to what a successful intervention looks like.
I don't believe that none of it is ever failure, ever. Solely because when you begin to work with the families and you begin to educate them on the disease of addiction and what's going on in their loved one's lives and bringing their behaviors to their awareness, things change as long as they take the knowledge and apply it. Sometimes they struggle with that, but for me, in the early stages when I was doing intervention, I remember the first time the guy didn't go to treatment. I was kind of like, he didn't go to treatment. And I kind of had this thing like, he said, this is wrong. So I went to my mentor and began talking to him about this. And he said, well, John, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. It sounds like this is all about you. And I said, whoa, that is about me. So it was a growing period for me and an opportunity for me to really look at why I was doing what I was doing. And it's not about me. And when that shift happened for me, the way I presented, the way I did interventions, the way I looked at them, and the way I viewed success of them completely changed. Through that education process, working with the families, working with the addict, and whether they go to treatment or not, things are going to change because of the heightened awareness that you now have. If you've properly educated the families, if you've correctly worked with them and led them in the proper directions and give them good guidance and suggestions and talk to them about family therapy and talk to them about all those things and do your part to kind of set that stuff up and set those plays into motion, then things are going to change. Things are going to be different. So whether Skippy goes to treatment or not, things are going to change. But that's my personal perception on failure, and that's just the way I look at a lot of things today. My personal relationship with failure is very different than most people's, so that could be a personal opinion. So I'm sure that there are people out there that say he didn't go to treatment, the intervention failed. Well, my response to that is then maybe you might want to take a look at your interventionist and what he actually did. Addiction is a family disease, and everybody needs to be addressed. Everybody needs to be educated. Everybody needs to do some work in order for anything to change. The addict's going to do what the addict does. There's this big new term that's out there, and it's SUD, substance use disorders. They say the word addict is demeaning and belittling, and it's stereotypical. So I'm trying to learn how to change some of my verbiage. So when I'm working with the person suffering from the SUD, my common verbiage is always going to be alcoholic or addict. It's just because that's my story. So when working with that person, and they don't go to treatment, they're going to do what they're going to do. You know what I mean? And my experiences has shown me that a lot of times with family members and people that are suffering is they don't have to change. And they're not going to change until they have to. Right. Internally. And that's for the person suffering with SUD, the person that's out there putting poison in their body, you know what I mean, in order to change how they feel. I wouldn't change until I had to. Until I could no longer live the way that I was living, I change. And you sit down at the room, someone walks in the room, who's the guy in the suit, blah, 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 where's the movie cameras, all that stuff. I've had all that stuff happen to me. I've had them sit down and say, look, we're just here because we want to talk to you. We've gathered a bunch of people that obviously love you, they care about you, they're concerned about you. Okay, I'll go. Just that fast. It's happened that fast before. I've had them jump up and down, yell and scream, run out the house, take 6 hours. I've had them completely, absolutely dead refuse. Intervention is typically a very scripted event. There should be no surprises except for the people that's being intervened on. That all depends on the type of intervention that you're doing, though, because there's multiple types of intervention. But if you're doing the typical, what's known as the Johnson model, which is a family gathering, you do a family meeting, there's a pre-intervention, there's a family meeting, and that's where all the roles are placed. Everyone's given their script. This is what you're going to do. This is when you're going to say it. It's a very scripted event. Those types of situations, like I said, the only person that really doesn't know what's happening is the person that's being intervened on. Best friends there, their mom, their dad, their grandma, their boss, or whoever it may be is all there. And it's like, holy crap, you know what I mean? Sometimes they go to treatment today. Sometimes they go to treatment next month. Sometimes they never go to treatment. The truth of the matter is this disease is killing people every single day. Sometimes they die. There's a lot of talk out there about they got to hit rock bottom, you know. And my response to a statement of that nature would be, so if I have cancer, I should wait until I'm in stage 4 to treat it? If I have diabetes, I should wait till they have to cut my feet off to treat it? You don't have to wait to hit rock bottom. The true intent from my perspective is intervention creates a bottom. You can create a bottom for them. One of the things that I think is really important to talk about is the process of intervention. And what that looks like from my perspective and the way I see it is an intervention is an act of love. It's not a blame game. You're not going to be coming in there and throwing all the bad things that your loved one has done at them. That's going to be very, very ineffective. They are already experiencing some of the most horrendous shame, regret, and guilt that a human being could ever experience just by being where they're at and the things that they're doing. You may think they don't care, but I'm telling you, they care. And they are beating themselves up, or they are so full of shame and guilt and remorse that it has consumed them. And the only way to make that continue to be acceptable is to continue to stay high. That was the only thing that made it acceptable, was being high for me. So I know what that feels like. You know, I know what that's like. So to go in there and start hurling all the things that they've done wrong at them, nobody can beat anybody worse than they beat themselves. You know, so intervention is an act of love. It is an opportunity for you to speak your truths in a room where, in a loving and caring manner, and offer a solution to the problem. You know, a lot of times when a typical Johnson model is designed, you know, I have sat down with family members multiple times and said, well, what do I say in these letters? And I tell them you love them. Tell them, you know, who you once were to them. And what has happened, and be as factual as you can. You know, go to specific events and be as detailed as possible. I remember when we used to go fishing, and you laughed so hard, I actually fell out of the boat, and your first fish was this 2-inch perch, and you were so happy. And I remember your first high school date, and how ecstatic you were, and how scared you were to ask that girl out. And I remember these things, your driver's license, when you got your driver's license. And then I remember when you got hurt playing football, and you started taking those pain pills. And I watched you deteriorate, and I watched you start to lie to us. And we watched this deception came, and when we watched you crash your car, and we watched you run away from your problems and lose your job. And we're just watching your health deteriorate, and you alienated yourself from us, and you ran from us, and all of those things, that's creating the bottom, helping them see where they once were, and helping them see that transition and how the progression of the disease has expired in their lives is emotional. The only thing that can beat this thing is love. Because the disease is consumed with hate and fear. Those are its weapons and its tools. And the only thing we can beat hate and fear with is love. So this is an act of love, and it's an act of compassion and an act of empathy. Not sympathy, because that's what got us, a lot of us here in the first place. It's a lot of family members. I got to help them, you know, or that whole scenario. So an intervention is an act of love. It's an act of compassion. So to go into an intervention hurling insults and throwing the things that they've done wrong at them is going to be very, very ineffective. They're probably just going to shut down and probably just walk out and leave. I've never used that type of a technique before. Maybe there's somebody out there that does. I'm not too much aware of that, and I wouldn't support that type of action in any way, shape, or form. These are people that are suffering from a disease, they're sick, and they're already beating themselves up enough.
I think that will do it for today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.